Welcome everybody to the DC New 52 review. I want to thank you for tuning into this episode. I am your host, Paulie DC, and let's get into the official 20th episode review. Today, I will break down Justice League Dark Volume 1. It was titled In the Dark, and it was written by Peter Milligan with art by Mikel Janin, and the first 6 issues were released between November 2011 to April of 2012. First things first, I think it's important to mention that this was the debut of the team, and the title immediately became a hit among the New 52, and showed pretty early on here that it isn't some Justice League B-Team spin-off. There were 6 main players to start off the series, so I'm going to shoot through them quick. We've got Madame Xanadu going back to 1978, having passed with the Phantom Stranger and the Spectre, also getting her own series from 2008 to right before the New 52, 2011, with eventual ties to Arthurian legend. And a quick fact, the word Xanadu also is seen in Samuel Taylor Coleridge's poem Kubla Khan, or A Vision in a Dream, with it being an imaginary city. Deadman, or Boston Brand, was created by Arnold Drake in 1967, who also co-created the Doom Patrol, which is notoriously rumored to being copied by the Marvel's X-Men. Boston has popped up in and around the DC Comics for a while, with big parts in the Blackest Night and Brightest Day stories. Then we've got Rock Shade, the Changing Man, who's appeared first in 1977 by a guy you may have heard of named Steve Ditko, and has had a couple series with his M-Vest having a ton of powers, and this time it can full-on screw with reality itself. Mind Warp Jay Young was created for this series by the first writer of the title, Peter Milligan, so not too much to him. Next is John Constantine, the Hellblazer, who hardly needs an introduction. My favorite character in the lot, first introduced in Alan Moore's Swamp Thing run, and he's a wonderfully layered, multi-dimensional creation. Zatanna, our backwards-speaking magician, is actually the oldest character in the lot, going all the way back to 1964, and even with her long history and past iterations, I still think she isn't utilized enough. Top 10 favorite DC female character of mine. Did you get all that? Great. Issue number 1 kicks off in Madame Xanadu's parlor with this first story and the genesis of the Justice League Dark, mostly being told through her perspective and narration. Her clairvoyance has shown images of the young June Moon, who Cara Delevingne did no favors for, being tormented by devil bulls, and visions of herself being run over by cars and buses. Dark stuff right away indeed. She's also constantly uttering parts of the "There Was a Crooked Man" nursery rhyme. Ruckshade is seen next using his M-Vest to disturbingly help him with the loss of his lover Kathy. And then after that, we get our first glimpse of the Enchantress, the longtime DC villain, anti-villain, being stuck in a magic envelope and causing some wildly messed up things to happen on Earth, garnering the attention of the Justice League. Wonder Woman, Superman, and Cyborg are at the epicenter, which is a cabin, and when they try to find out what's happening inside, they are repelled by magic rotten teeth. Ugh. This is a good a time as ever as well to mention that I constantly question Supes' vulnerabilities to magic, but that's all I'm gonna say for now. Batman is seen speaking with Zatanna, since these two have lots of history, and they discuss Enchantress, with Zatanna making the decision on what to do alone. Also, I didn't mind the goth and tattoo look for her, but the sullen, uber-serious demeanor was... Constantine is then shown next, getting put in a magical vortex, bringing him to a location of Zatanna's choosing. And after that, Deadman is seen with Dawn Granger, aka Dove, who gets a visit from June Moon asking for him. Xanadu has called out to Rock, summoning him to where she is, and when he gets there, he nags her about an unnamed drug problem she has, so she retorts by questioning his freaky female issues. Next, Rock is told a team must be brought together to face the impending threat with a final vision of a lot of death. Yes, this did start a little bit all over the place, but it was setting up for an excellent new title on the block. Issue number 2 starts with the motorcycle riding Zatanna getting a look at how powerful the Enchantress is as she turns an entire street into a wicked, rotting mess. Z tries to stop it with her magic, but it's not strong enough, so she makes the rash decision to use it on herself to force a type of stasis that protects her. I might as well say here that with magic and sorcery in most IPs, there are no rules, no guidelines, or explanations given as to what beats what or how the array of types even work. That's just the way it is. Anyway, Deadman is pulling a Wonder Woman 1984 so he can try to get closer to Dawn Granger and blah. Let's not get into that one any further. Dawn, of course, leaves, but is then followed to her apartment by Boston, where they argue about what just happened, before being interrupted by June Moon, as seen in issue number 1. Deadman tries to help June by possessing her and looking for reasons why the Enchantress was separated from her recently, since the two were anchored together. With no clear answers though, he then makes things even weirder with Dawn, this time getting her to take off to who knows where, only to be targeted by the Enchantress herself, making Dove bring out the supersuit. Constantine is briefly seen again, this time intentionally getting himself stabbed in a bar fight to help with some of the darker, almost filthy occult stuff that he dabbles in. And this particular ritual is to help him find Zatanna, who is still comatose, as seen on the last page, with Xanadu working out her own secret motives by leading the Enchantress to the soon-to-be Justice League Dark members. In issue number 3, we see that the Enchantress is on the hunt for some of the main characters and is kinda gross. Constantine has found Zatanna and snaps her back to reality with some of the backward magic that he picked up from her last time they were together, which is the first bit of laying groundwork for their relationship, which in the next scene is shown to be along the lines of the Will Smith and Jada Pinkett variety. June has decided to stay with Deadman, and while they chat, Rock tries to call out to Boston, which he denies since the MVS powers scare June. So Rock asks Xanadu what to do next, suspecting she's up to no good, and then is told he must find someone else for the team that he doesn't agree with. June winds up on a rooftop thinking that Rock's M-Vest was the Enchantress and nearly kills herself because of that, causing Deadman to save her, but how did he then get her to safety, you ask, since she was left hanging from a pretty high balcony? I don't know, and I don't care. Boston gets a little too close with Miss Moon, considering that he's, seen Dawn Granger, but I mean, he's a ghost, so I ain't real sure how all that would work to begin with. Rock is next trying to decide what to do with the Madame Xanadu request when it's seen that his meta vest is not only extremely powerful, but also seems to be alive when it acts out on its own, creating a grotesque version of his lover Kathy, who is the longtime character from his past, full name Kathy George. After some very, very unwanted tongue action, Rock rids Kathy from the area and then hits a bar, because where else would you go after seeing and experiencing that? Where he then gets spotted by Constantine, and after a drink decides to find Jay Young, or Mind Warp, the one person he didn't want to locate for Xanadu. Jay has a rather interesting power called the Seizure Soul, which basically is what it's called. His soul seizures out of his body, and he also uses his abilities to kill, so he's not exactly the nicest person. I did like his quote though: a Christian saint rots in the same oblivion as the foulest Nazi killers. Lastly, June and Boston are traveling together somewhere, but all of a sudden hit someone that ends up being the Enchantress. How could you not see that was a trap? When June saw that MVS light show earlier, she nearly took a header off the top of a building. Issue number 4 directly continues from issue number 3 with the Enchantress trying to capture June, but Boston intervenes by trying to possess the witch, only to see an empty void inside of her, and after bursting out xenomorph alien style, he tells June that that was just a shell version of Enchantress. Dove has returned home battered and bloody from her unseen encounter with the Enchantress, where Constantine is waiting to ask where Deadman is and to stay away from June Moon in his usual charming way. Now, does Dawn being here carry over into her Hawk and Dove series or even Deadman's DC Presents segment, or is she seen here again in this series? No. After this, Rock and Mind Warp's encounter is wrapped up as Jay has already killed an arms dealer with plans to do the same to his mistress, so Rock stops and partially eliminates him. Xanadu is seeing more nightmarish visions of what the Enchantress is causing worldwide, so she decides that she needs to get some of her drugs to help with things. And this drug use was actually a quite mature addition and appropriate for the setting and tone for this series, even though it was abandoned after Volume 1. The true Enchantress suddenly emerges from her envelope. Don't ask me why she was in there of all places. And even though an already villainous and very dangerous character, it's seen here that the witch is going a bit insane, biting off, or rather magically blasting off, the head of one of her minions when bad news is brought to her. Zatanna then shows up to try and take on the Enchantress alone, which is dumb as hell considering that she had to turn herself into a vegetable during their last interaction. This time, things go just as poorly, with Z looking like she's gonna be clawed to death, so a retreat quickly ensues, ending up with Shade since he was trying to summon Deadman, but got her instead because of the mixing of their magic. Xanadu has scored her drugs, and on the way home sees more visions similar to the one at the end of issue number 1, with dead bodies everywhere, including Justice League Dark members and a skeleton standing over them. Once back in her place, Constantine is waiting to get into a slap fight with her regarding the entire Enchantress situation. June and Boston are still together, contemplating what to do next when Shade tries to reach out to them again, and this time they decide to accept. But the two are separated when the M-Vest tries to transport them, with June being intercepted right into the clutches of the Enchantress. Issue number 5 concludes the Enchantress story with 3 others from darker corners of the New 52. Mitch Shelley, the Resurrection Man, Frankenstein with Father Time, and Animal Man Buddy Baker, dealing with creatively creepy situations brought on by the witch, who now has June firmly in her grasp, only for Constantine to interrupt. And in Madame Xanadu's narration here, she says that it was her that separated Miss Moon from the Enchantress all along. Deadman, Shade, Zatanna, and Xanadu are all together trying to decide where to find June, but since Madame X isn't the most convincing gal, Boston ignores her attempts at team control and takes off. Ruck and the 2 ladies then head right to the cabin doorstep of the Enchantress, immediately being greeted by the disgusting rotten teeth storm. Ruck's M-Vest protects the 3 at first, but then starts to act up again, leaving them vulnerable, so Zatanna uses the cliche kiss the person to focus them tactic to get him back on point. My man is for sure going to be mentioning his M-Vest's problems around Z more often from now on. Right after this, Zatanna becomes transfixed and begins to rant an apology to her father. Right at the same time, Xanadu begins screaming about the future that she tried to prevent coming to fruition, otherwise known as John Constantine, who, if you paid attention to, was never actually reached out to by our raven-haired clairvoyant, but instead kind of forced into things by our raven-haired magician, also at one point saying that he got his own visions. Constantine is running things his own way with June, and if you know old Johnny, what he says and does to her here is light work for him. As he recites the Crooked Man rhyme, figuring out that that was the spell Xanadu used to unbind June from the Enchantress, Deadman finds wherever it is they are, and because of what John's doing to her not looking pleasant, he tries to possess him, only to emerge in distraught manner, which Constantine tried to advise against. I always thought it would have been really funny if Boston puked up whatever was in his stomach when he died, shocking the other two here, like possessing John makes a ghost sick. That would have been hilarious. Around the same time this is all happening, Mind Warp locates Rock and the two ladies who are still stuck in their unstable state, and then we cut back to Constantine as he's completed the spell, binding June to the Enchantress again. As Jay arrives as well, his energy spikes to mix with Enchantress's, leaving a smoky pile of rubble behind. Okay, sure. Madame Xanadu and Zatanna return to normal and then speak to the witch about helping her in a place where she can recover. If you thought that final confrontation ended rather abruptly and easily, well, you're right, it did. The last scene is of the team members confronting Xanadu with her feigning knowledge on why everything just happened and John calling BS on it and then telling her to F off Englishman style before everyone then leaves with Madam X pleading that they stay a team and then seeing a new future vision in her scattered tarot cards. Issue number 6 is sort of like a getting the old gang back together situation, as nightmares are aplenty among our main characters, with Constantine watching London burn, Zatanna being chased by ravenous corpses, Rock witnessing Kathy turning into a gross monster and then tearing himself apart, yikes, and Deadman looking over the dead body of Dove. These nightmares bring everyone to Madame Xanadu's parlor for an explanation, but firstly, John has to be John a bit, warranting a punch from Shade. The way Deadman cheers when it happens, since those two have issues as well, really killed me. Since the cast is all together here, I want to mention quick about who knows who. John knew Z and Xanadu, but not Boston, who didn't know anybody, and Rock, who he also didn't know, but Rock did know Xanadu. And I think that's it. As the group discusses their problems, the giant monster from Shade's nightmare attacks the place, forcing them to try and fight it off. Zatanna goes on the frontline defense when it's realized the M-Vest is acting up again, so Deadman possesses Shade and makes him face the monster head on, causing a crazy light storm which Shade emerges from, saying that the monster had to kill itself when it couldn't kill him. Xanadu uses this opportunity to say that if they can work together, they can prevent what they witnessed in their recent nightmares, which was a future that she foresaw, but during her speech, she then begins to spaz out, yelling that Kane the Vampire has been released. Uh-oh. Early crossover with the iVampire title coming up. Alright. Now, it's pretty undeniable that the setup and execution for this series was hit right in the bullseye. The cast is stellar, and the way the interactions take place among them is all realistic among a team that just got put together. The best part is that each character gets equal respect and page time to establish them and some of their personality traits. John and Boston having some kind of issues with each other, Xanadu trying to be a leader but not doing so well, Rock, Jay, and Zatanna having big psychological problems, making the powers that they have scarily dangerous. It's all really good stuff. The art, on the other hand, is just mesmerizing. Don't even get me started on some of those splash pages. Mikel Janin was also one of my favorite artists throughout the New 52, so I always looked out for his work. And the subject matter of this series was really captured. Like, it became dark and scary, but it really mixed with the superhero aesthetic very well. There are two parts of the plot that I want to make mentions about. First, we've got the Enchantress. She wasn't seen again after this, but was a big part of the Rebirth Suicide Squad, so that's pretty good. And then the other part is, why would Xanadu say that she did want John to be a part of things at the end when during the entire plot line she made no effort to get him involved and told him to leave after slapping the guy in issue number 4? Well, I think the Enchantress story was gonna go longer, but upcoming things planned with the Justice League Dark, it just had to be wrapped up. And Constantine needed to be included for those things to come. I've noticed my habit of idea suggestions for books reviewed on the channel so far, and this one being the first with the Justice League Dark name, I thought it was also a lost opportunity for DC to just give it everything they had. Let us see what you got. Bring out all the magic-based heroes you got and just go nuts. You could have instead put the Enchantress on an already together Justice League Dark-like team and have them as constant adversaries over the series, vying for who's best in their craft and position of which team got opportunities or alliances with the other powerful groups in the New 52. Yes, the team would expand its ranks to other characters in the event that fit the bill for this title, but what about Ragman, Blue Devil, Black Alice, Dr. Fate, The Creeper, Wanna Beast? And those are just a few that were actually seen in the New 52 comics. Why not include Bloodwind, Nightshade, Tracy 13, Sebastian Faust, Lagoon Boy, and those are just a few characters that I'm most familiar with. I guess I'm just not a big fan of the Seven Dwarf rule, and with a literal brand new fresh title, let alone a team-based one, why not just try to take it to the next level? I will leave things at that though, and if you've watched to the end here, I want to thank you personally for that, and to please like, share, and subscribe, and to please join me on all my social media platforms, and to join me next time for Hawk and Dove Volume 1.